Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy this video, we invite those of you who haven't yet done so, to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the notification icon, to be notified when the next one is uploaded. We'd like to urge those of you who haven't yet done so, to sign our online petition for an inquiry into the BBC and Channel 4's coverage of Lewis Hamilton and Abu Dhabi. A link has been provided in the description. If you are on X, then please repost our tweet. Thank you. Our regulars may recall that we have produced several videos highlighting our good friend Martin Brundle's well-documented bias against Lewis Hamilton. Brundle, to recall, is the former racing driver who described his F3 season, racing against the revered Ayrton Senna, as one of the greatest rivalries of all time. It is a testament to his dissembling skills that when we asked Google who Hamilton and Schumacher's toughest F3 rivals were, it came up with Nico Hülkenberg and Mika Häkkinen respectively. So, competition in F3 does not necessarily carry over into F1, and each comparison needs to be assessed on its own merits. Schumacher is on record as having acknowledged the double world champion Flying Finn as the best opponent he's ever had. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on your outlook, we only have Martin's take on his rivalry with the great Senna, because the Brazilian is not on record as having acknowledged him in any way, shape or form. Furthermore, Martin's record in F1 does not suggest or provide any reason why the Brazilian would have rated him at all. Any suggestion that Brundle was Senna's toughest rival can be attributed solely to the Brit, and with such astonishing descriptive skills, it is no wonder that he ended up as the chief commentator for F1's official English-language broadcaster, Sky Sports. We have documented how over the years, this unfulfilled racing driver became a journalist of ill repute, who could be relied upon to spew out bitter comments about Sir Lewis, which a toxic media can then use to generate sensational headlines. For example, in 2016, when Hamilton was engaged in a tense battle with his teammate, as Mercedes were being accused of sabotaging his car to favour the German, the British media decided to attack the British driver because they felt that his use of social media was unbecoming for an F1 driver. Expectedly, Martin provided the headlines when he outrageously labelled the then three-time world champion childish and stupid. We also showed how, despite never having won a race in Formula One, Brundle in 2011 saw fit to criticise the winning mentality of the young driver, who beat his double world champion teammate in his debut season, came within a whisker of winning the title that he had led going into the season finale, and then went on to claim the title the following season. So, Brundle has a checkered history of making the most unhinged criticisms of Hamilton, which might account for his high ranking in F1 media. It could be argued that the highest or lowest point of the attacks, depending on your perspective, was in Abu Dhabi 2021, when in real time, he orchestrated the gaslighting of the theft of his 8th title, as he willfully attempted to mislead the millions of astonished viewers that were watching the race live, into believing that the race steward was entitled to rig the results. He subsequently went on media rounds to double down on the gaslighting that he did during the race. For the next 3 seasons after the robbery, Brundle did everything possible to prop up Max's stolen title, while undermining Sir Lewis's legacy. Even after his historic transfer to Ferrari was announced, Brundle did everything he could to criticize the move and lead the chorus that the GOAT had lost his edge. As noted in our previous video titled, Martin Brundle Stalks Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari, the gift that keeps on giving to Sky F1, we were surprised to find that at the beginning of this year, Sky made him row back from his unrelenting attacks, so as to suggest that he was a Hamilton supporter, who had no doubt that the GOAT, who was the gift that has kept giving to Sky, could win his 8th in his debut Ferrari season. However, it would appear that Sky and Brundle, either because of ill will or greed, have no qualms about killing the Golden Goat. They seem to want to provoke unwarranted criticism while counterfactually suggesting that they are supporting his title run. The latest gratuitous attack on the Golden Goat can be definitively traced to Martin's unhinged comments about him being angsty during radio communications with his engineer, in Melbourne. This was a calculated smear designed to provoke controversy and monetize anti-Lewis sentiment. In his regular post-race Sky column, Martin wrote that, "I don't understand why Lewis was so angsty with his engineer Riccardo Adami, who I felt was simply trying to pass over relevant and helpful information." Brundle did not suggest that there was any bad language during this exchange, and Hamilton himself has since expressed his surprise that there was any controversy about it at all, because he had minded his P's and Q's.
I don't know why everyone's been so negative about it, because if you go and...
It wasn't a negative question.
No, I'm not saying for you, but like generally the media have been talking about it, and I was polite. I was like, I always said please at the end, even though I was like racing. And when you look at some of the other drivers who have been super vocal, almost abusive, like with their engineers, have taken batterings for years, and mine didn't even take a battering. And there was a couple of individuals that were quite rude on how we spoke. Yeah. So but anyways, it's something you learn along the way. So from race to race, we're going to get stronger together, and that's the most important part.
Critically, all of the controversy was whipped up by Brundle's unwarranted and unjustified attack. How is it that of all the drivers in the race, it was Hamilton who is reputedly the cleanest on the grid, and an advocate for cleaning up the language in F1, that Martin described as angsty? It should be noted that Martin is aware that Max's rising tendency to poison the airwaves with foul language reached such levels last year as to spawn the introduction of rules to combat it. Rules that Brundle is on record as supporting, with the proviso that drivers should be exempted when in the cockpit. However, when writing in the same column after last year's Austrian GP, in which an overly aggressive Max whose potty mouth had been running all season, had moved several times under braking and eventually tried to take Lando out rather than allow him to continue after the two had initially collided, Martin introduced the word angsty to describe Max, without referencing any of the bad language he had spewed over the radio. Now this is the same word that he used to describe Hamilton engaging in a polite and civil exchange with his engineer, during a rain-affected race that could possibly go down as one of the most chaotic ever, with multiple crashes, safety cars, and a late race downpour. A race in which the lead that Hamilton had been able to build up while on slick tires during the moderate wet spell was lost because the team had opted to keep him out when others were coming in for wets as the rain intensified. This error of judgment ended up costing both Ferrari drivers dearly as they dropped down the order to 8th and 10th. Martin labeling Max's conduct in Austria and Sir Lewis's in Australia as angsty is just another shocking example of the injustice and bias that the black driver is constantly facing in Formula One. Brundle, who claimed that he was completely okay with drivers swearing in the cockpit, in the heat of the moment, full of adrenaline, full of despair, or happiness, was so aggrieved with the tone that Sir Lewis communicated with his engineer during a race, that he turned a negative media spotlight on him despite him not swearing, while in the cockpit, in the heat of the moment, full of adrenaline, in the midst of his debut Ferrari race, which just happened to be taking place in one of the most chaotic races ever. So, for the black goat who does not swear, it is the subjective matter of tone, but for every other driver it is the objective matter of language. Expectedly, Brundle's outrageously untethered comments went viral as they provided F1 media with sensational headlines to undermine the GOAT's legacy. We are not aware of any media reports criticizing Brundle for making such outrageous comments. As mentioned earlier, when speaking to reporters ahead of the Chinese Grand Prix, Hamilton commented that he couldn't understand what all the media fuss had been about, because he had been polite throughout the exchanges, while others like Max routinely engage in more heated and colorful exchanges over the radio. Predictably, the media went to town on those remarks as well. Critically, when reporting on Hamilton's response, Sky noted that he hit back at those who had criticized his radio communication. They conveniently omitted to acknowledge that the person who set off all the criticism was none other than their chief propagandist. So, we can expect to see Brundle making more unhinged comments, to undermine Sir Lewis's legacy and provoke sensational headlines for F1 media to monetize. Guess this is what they meant by the gift that keeps on giving. It would be advisable for someone at Ferrari or within Sir Lewis's team to start pushing back against this disgraceful conduct by Sky and Brundle, otherwise history has shown that it will repeatedly get progressively worse. Forza Ferrari.